Thank you, Allison. Thank you. That was just simply that good.
Yeah.
Not too long ago, in a place quite far from here, there was a city slicker driving his shiny new car, and he found himself quite lost because he had ventured off the main road and he was driving through what appeared to be like farmland. He saw a grizzled old farmer standing by a mailbox, sucking on a piece of wheat straw, and he thought he'd stop and ask him where he was. So he pulls over in his shiny new car, sees this old guy. He says, "Hey, old man." He says, "I appear to be kind of lost here." He says, "Can you tell me where I am?" The old man took a little moment, sucking on that straw, and took it out of his mouth. He said, "Yeah, boy, look to me, you right here." He said, no. What I mean is like, how did I get here?" Old man took a beat again. He said, "Well, look like to me you come from down there, boy." He said, no. I mean, where am I going? Where is this road headed?" He said, "Look like to me the road going right down yonder there." He said, "No, listen, I'm trying to get back to the main highway. Can you tell me at least, old man, how to get to the main highway?" Old man thought for a minute and said, "Well, no, you can't get there from here." He was exasperated by now. He said, "You stupid old man, you don't know much, do you?" Old man thought for a minute, took a straw out, and he said, "No, I expect I don't, boy. But I ain't lost, neither." We laugh at that, but how often do we ask people who don't have a clue which path to take? Sounds to me like the blind leading the blind. You know, oftentimes you may have had the experience of having a conversation with somebody who plays a game. You can't win. I mean, no matter what you say, "Nope, can't do that. Oh, no, that won't work. Oh, no, you just can't win." They got you coming and going. You know, people who say things like, "I'm so broke I can't pay attention. I'm so broke I can't change my mind." You know? It sounds to me like the blind leading the blind. And so if you ever have that experience, I would suggest try asking the divine instead of the blind. And in deference to those who may be differently able, I need to clarify that when I use the word blind, I do not mean sight impaired. I mean blind to the magnificence, the power and the presence inside of us. Because I know quite a few people who are sight impaired, but have vision and insight from a spiritual nature, from the third eye, and can see far more than the human eye could ever see. So today, we are back again with chapter 2, exploring the final 3 steps of the spiritual mind treatment. Last week, just to recap, you may remember, we had some phenomenal teachers in this room, the leaders of the 21st century. The president called and announced that they were on the way. They came in and they taught us the first 2 steps of treatment. Anybody remember what they were? God is all there is to see. The first step, recognition. Recognizing the presence of God is a prayer in itself. If you can say the words, "God is," you have established a conscious contact. And a place inside of you that knows and it knows that it knows instantly wakes up. There is like an electric current, a recognition of the presence and power, that one who has created you out of itself. And the second step, anybody remember what it was? God and I are one. Unification. Again, a prayer unto itself. When we can recognize that God is right here, it shifts us into a new paradigm. Because we talked about last week how the old map was about God being up in heaven somewhere, looking down, sending lightning bolts and judging us, and we had to pray and supplicate, God, please help us, help us, help us. Well, what Betty so wonderfully shared is that God is already in the business of being God. And we don't have to beg God for anything. But if we can affirm that we recognize the presence of God, that God is right where we are, that electricity happens, magic happens, just from those 2 steps. And so today we're going to explore the final 3 steps of the spiritual mind treatment that Betty took us through in just a moment. And those 3 steps are realization, thanksgiving, and release. And I'll share with you some scriptural passages that will help you to anchor this, and we can learn quite a bit from Jesus, the master teacher, who demonstrated these steps in Scripture. We also, last week, demonstrated an affirmation that helps us to remember the foundational essence of the first 2 steps. Anybody remember that affirmation? There is only one life. Say it with me. There is only one life. That life is God's life. Once more. That life is God's life. That life is perfect life. That life is perfect life. That life is my life now. That life is my life now. Yes. Hear the power in those words? One night at the spiritual healing circle on Wednesday night, we repeated those affirmations 108 times. And I'm telling you, we were walking about this high off the ground. It was just an electric current running through all of us because it helps us to anchor that vibration, the truth of who and whose we are. We also talked about these are spiritual principles and spiritual practices. And of course, a principle is no good unless we have a corresponding practice. So today I'd like to share with you a little background information on the Science of Mind, on Ernest Holmes, who was the founder of Science of Mind, and also the spiritual mind treatment. Like, where did this come from? So in 1909, at the age of 25, Ernest Holmes read a book by the author of this Pathway of Roses, Christian B. Larson, who was a contemporary mystic of that time. This book was called The Ideal Made Real. And Holmes was better able to comprehend these ideas after he had read Emerson. He was inspired by Emerson, by the Transcendental Movement, and he experienced a spiritual high while he was reading Larson. And it inspired him to plunge more deeply into mystical teachings, esoteric and metaphysical practices. Holmes learned 3 ideas from Larson that he incorporated in the spiritual mind treatment and in this practice that we practice today. Number 1, that prayer continues consciously or unconsciously all the time. Out of the 60,000 thoughts that we have in a day, I tried to count them, but I keep losing track. But out of those 60,000 thoughts that we have in a day, a good number of them are prayers anchored in our faith, our belief, and our acceptance. And we repeat them over and over and over to ourselves, unaware of the effect that's showing up in our lives. So therefore, we must learn to consciously pray without ceasing. Consciously pray. And behold the good in everyone and everything. We have the power to name it good, to declare a thing so, and it is so. How many times do we say to the universe, I just don't have enough money, I just don't have enough money? And the universe, through the law, says back to us, yes, I know, you don't have enough money. We can change that. Number 2, we can overcome negative relative conditions by learning to control our thoughts. Because our thoughts are the foundation of our belief. And a belief is simply a thought that we continue to think. A belief is simply a thought that we continue to think. Doesn't make it true, but it does make it a belief if we continue to think it. And this teaching invites us to examine our beliefs, to examine our thoughts, and to change them. And finally, number 3, we are not victims of circumstance. We actually create the conditions in our life by the way we think about life. And we have the freedom to choose our thoughts. So there was an article in the January 1929 issue of Science of Mind magazine. Now, can you imagine that? 1929. That was the year after my daddy left Paducah, Kentucky, going to Chicago. 1929. Science of Mind magazine was in existence there. Can you imagine that? We have current issues, not the 1929 issue, but the 2013 issue right there in the bookstore. You can take one home with you. This magazine article was entitled Treatment, What, Why, How. He was referring to spiritual mind treatment. So Ernest offered an explanation of the technique. He wrote, a treatment is for the purpose of changing one's own consciousness, not to change the attitude of God. We don't need to change God's mind. God is already clear about who God is and what God's intention is. But it's to change our own consciousness. Ernest writes, quiet the mind and definitely state that faith and understanding are present. Mentally state and spiritually feel that a conscious and constructive presence pervades all life. Affirm that the spirit wills to respond and that it does respond. Sit quietly and believe. And now state your desire as simply as possible, using only such words as have real meaning to you. Never try to use other people's thought. You are alone with cause. See to it that no denial of this thought enters your mind. And as simply as you can, create a definite acceptance in your mind that you are being guided into paths of peace and abundance. Feel a response in your thought. Feel that what you state is the truth about yourself. Affirm that you accept and believe and receive. And there it is, as simple as it is. The 5 steps of treatment. So today, our scriptural passage that will help us to establish the foundation of our lesson is from the book of Romans, chapter 12, verse 2. And I'm reading from the Lamsa Bible, which is the direct Aramaic translation of the scripture. So the wording is a little bit different, but it hasn't been translated from the Hebrew into the Greek, into the Latin, into the English. This is a direct translation from the Aramaic, which is the language of that day. Do not imitate the way of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your minds, that you may discern what is that good and acceptable and perfect will of God. Do not imitate the way of this world. Powerful words. In the Metaphysical Bible Dictionary, they go a little bit deeper and give you a background about the psychological and metaphysical meanings of these scriptures. The Metaphysical Bible offers a description and a definition of Roman. This is from the book of Romans. It relates to thoughts and activities belonging to that in consciousness which Rome symbolizes. Rome represents the head, in contrast to Jerusalem, which represents the heart. The head is the seat of the dominating personal will, and also the intellect of man. And to the outer man, these are the seat of all strength and power. When the will, guided by sense intellect and the personal idea of ruling power, imprisons the word, binds it in the realm of personal understanding and dictatorship, the activity of spirit seems inhibited. And in that sense, what they are saying to us is that our mind has the ability to filter our perception, and it will tell us things that are not true and keep the truth from us because of the ruling influence of the intellect. And so the head, the mind, is like the Rome of our existence. It's where the dictator, where the emperor resides. we have spiritual power over the enemy. Moses gave us a good story about that, going to the Pharaoh and saying, let my people go. But that's a different subject. So when we talk about the renewing of the mind here today, we are speaking in the context of the correct use of the will to renew our mind by choosing a transformation, a new birth. Ernest Holmes was asked in later years if there were anything he would change about science of mind, philosophy. And he remarked if there was one thing that he would add, it would be a greater emphasis on love. Love points the way, and law makes it possible. And so this is not new science, but it is ancient metaphysical science that we're exploring here today. So we're prepared for the work of the third step by the mental work that we did in recognition and unification. One of the things that we experienced in the foundation class, as Reverend Charles mentioned to us, that, it's good when preparing ourselves for treatment that we call ourselves into a place of loving. We take a moment to turn within. We call to our mind's eye the image of someone we love, or of someone that loves us. And in that way, our heart is open to become receptive to the love flowing through us, through our word. In this step of realization, this third step, we prepare ourselves by asking, what is God capable of doing here? This is the step when we make our declaration, our proclamation. What are the attributes of God as they apply to this situation, the circumstance that we want to change? And we would use affirmations. God is joy, harmony. God is perfect peace. God is perfect health. God is abundant prosperity. God is divine and perfect order. And just speaking our word of the realization of these things, it creates in our mind a mental equivalent so that it is done unto us according to our faith, our belief, and our acceptance. And in that moment, God serves to create an energy, an excitement, a passion, a divine connection inside of us, because we are turning to that which we are wanting. And as we turn to it, we realize that that which we are seeking is also seeking us. We speak our word with conviction, declaring what we want to see manifest. For the past 2 months, members of the Unexpected Income Club have been working together in consciousness teams, calling each other daily, some in the morning, some in the afternoon, some twice a day, reading the prayer for prosperity, which you'll find out on the outside of the table, the membership table. You can also download this from the AHIAH website. And if you'd like to join the Unexpected Income Club, see me after service, and we'd be happy to sign you up. And it works, it's guaranteed to work, or you can have your old broke life back. But the prayer for prosperity has some very powerful affirmations in it, such as all channels of financial supply are open to me now, and I am richly, bountifully, and beautifully prospered in every wonderful way. This word which I speak in faith, believing, activates the law of increased universal good for me. I expect it, I receive it, I open to it. I visualize the financial good I expect. I see it coming to me now, richly and abundantly. I claim and accept it for myself. This is an example of a realization, a declaration. I do this every day, and sometimes throughout the day. And sometimes if I'm driving around and I'm just thinking about something else on the radio, I'll turn it off and I'll just do my prosperity affirmation. So I woke up yesterday, went out to go and do a little bit of banking, and found out that I had a low tire. My tire low indicator was on. So I thought, I'll go fix it. So I'm driving around thinking about, now, how did I get a flat tire? So the mind starts running, right? Then the mind says, oh, it's Saturday, it's 3 o'clock. You're not going to find anybody to fix this tire. You're going to be in trouble, right? It starts to proclaim, right, doom and gloom. So I go down on Colorado to the Firestone place, and the guy says, oh yeah, it'll be like 2 hours. 2 hours, and I'm thinking, oh man, this is not going to work. So I'm still doing my affirmation, just driving around. I drove down Walnut and just passed by a place, 2411, I remember the address, And there was like hardly anybody in there. And so I just drove in, went in and says, hey, can you guys fix a flat? And the guy says, yeah, sure, just pull it in. So we go in, I sit down, I'm doing my work, and he gets done pretty quickly, about 15, 20 minutes. And so I'm standing there when a lady comes in to buy some tires, and I'm standing behind her, and I'm pulling out my credit card. And the guy says, oh, your car is ready now. I said, oh, okay. And so how much do I owe you? He says, oh, Merry Christmas. I said, Merry Christmas? This is August. He says, that's all right, Merry Christmas. And I thought, this is answered prayer. You see, this is the goodness, the givingness of God to itself. This is what I do in my daily life. And God was simply reflecting back to me my state of consciousness. Right? And you know, when I pulled up in that place, you know what my head said? You don't know these people. You've never been here before. They might try to rip you off. That's what it said. And I said, thank you for sharing. So realization, declaration is a powerful, powerful process. The fourth step is thanksgiving. Thanksgiving. We give thanks, blessing it even before we see it, because we know it already exists. It's already on the way. In John 11:41-42, in the story of raising Lazarus from the dead, this is a powerful story. I never realized how deep it was, so I went through the Metaphysical Bible Dictionary and began to look at the cast of characters and what they represent. Here's the story. Jesus said to her, did I not say to you that if you believe, you will see the glory of God? He's talking to her about recognition, that first step. Believing that God is. That's all. God is. That's the conscious content. So they took away the stone. Now, where do you think the stone was? It was in here, you see. Because this is where the tomb is. It was in here. So they took away the stone. And Jesus lifted his eyes upward and said, O Father, I thank thee, for thou hast heard me. Unification, recognition, thanking God in advance. But we know if God is right where we are, how could God not hear us? How could God not know our every desire? And how could God not grant it? I remember once a Hindu telling me about the Divine Mother, saying we worship God as a Divine Mother because a mother will never, ever deny the cries of her children. And I thought that is so beautifully evocative. And I love that description of God as the Divine Mother. So here's what happens next. O Father, I thank thee, for thou hast heard me, and I know that thou always hearest me. But I say these things just because of these people who stand around, so that they may believe that thou hast sent me. And Jesus, the master teacher right there, is referring to the attitude of gratitude and how contagious it is. When people ask you how you're doing in the street, try this. I'm grateful with no complaints. And watch the expression on their face. It shifts their energy. It's contagious because they realize, well, ain't no use in complaining. It ain't going to do no good anyway. But they catch it. They catch the energy of it. And Jesus, the master teacher, is talking about when we speak the word of thanksgiving, of gratitude, people around us catch the energy. And instantly they know who has sent you. They know because that presence of gratitude and thanksgiving, it exists in them as well. And it reminds them of who they are. Now here's a very important metaphysical detail in this scriptural passage that we need to pay attention to. And you can read this on your own. In your meditation time, read this passage. Take a moment to just contemplate it and meditate on it. In this next step, Jesus gives us the final steps of the spiritual mind treatment. This is 11:43-44. And when he had said this, He cried with a loud voice, meaning he was emphatic. He was loud. He was commanding it. And sometimes that is what we need to do to get the Lazarus to wake up in me. We need to command it, that I know that this appearance that's in front of me is not greater than the God that's in the midst of me. We need to say it in a loud voice because we're convincing who? Not God. We're convincing ourselves. We are calling ourselves forward out of the tomb. And Jesus, when he had said this, he cried with a loud voice, Lazarus, which was the Aramaic name. Lazarus, come forth. Come forth. And like I said last week, he didn't say, Lazarus, you smell it pretty bad in there. You've been dead for a long time. I don't see how you're going to get up out of that grave. He didn't say any of that. He said, come forth. I command you, come forth. And the next verse says, and the dead man came out. The dead man came out. That dead man inside of you. That entombed part of us. His hands and his feet bound with burial clothes. His face bound with a burial napkin. And Jesus said to them, the last step, loose him and let him go. Loose him and let him go. Let him go. Loose him. And in the Aramaic scripture, the word that Jesus spoke was the word shwakim. Shwakim is also found in the Lord's Prayer when it says to forgive as we have forgiven others. The word is shwakim, meaning we loose them. We loose them. We set them free, and we set ourselves free. So after Jesus gave thanks, he released Lazarus. Now this story of Lazarus deserves its own Sunday sermon because it is so rich in teachings. Lazarus in the Metaphysical Bible Dictionary means one whom God helps. That part of us whom God helps. And it refers to the part of consciousness that is helped by the good, often neglected by the man himself. So it is that which we have allowed to die inside of us. It goes on to say that the raising of Lazarus, the brother of Mary and Martha, signifies the restoring to consciousness of the idea of youth, which is asleep in the subconsciousness or the tomb of the mind. People grow old because they let the idea of youth fall asleep. Let me say that again. People grow old because they let the idea of youth fall asleep. The idea is not dead, but it is sleeping. And the understanding I am consciousness, the Jesus, the master teacher, the Christ inside of us, goes forward to awaken it, commanding it to come forward. And this awakening of the youthful energies is necessary to one who is in regeneration or transformation, renewing the mind. The body cannot be refined and made like its creator, eternal, until all the thoughts necessary to its perpetuation are revived in it. Eternal youth is one of those God-given ideas that man loves. And Jesus loved Lazarus. So this step of thanksgiving reminds us of this love. To move through life in this frequency, in this vibration, releases us from the prison of that inner Roman Empire, that tomb right here. Finally, step 5 is the release step. I let go, and I let God. Shock you. I loose it. I release it. I let it go. Knowing God is guiding. I know God is guiding. This is the final step in treatment, and it's a prayer in itself. It is a way of moving through the world. The next time you encounter somebody who's obviously got some blindness going on, they got a lot of drama going on, we can just turn from it. I release it. I release it. I let it go. I let it go. Powerful. Powerful. In the 12-step programs, they have signs on the walls reminding to let go and let God. Oftentimes, people will say, remember to surrender. You got to surrender to win. I love that. And the opposite of surrendering, of letting go, is judgment, resistance. I don't want it to be this way. Why is it got to be this way? I can fix this. They shouldn't be like this. And what does that give us? More frustration. But conversely, when we can have a learning orientation to life, and we can release it, knowing that God is going to reveal the lesson to us, we can accept that there can be learning in all situations in life, and that God can reveal that meaning. That revelation in itself is a learning. Just the fact that we can say, this is here to bring me some learning, is powerful. Often people who have had the life experience of cancer will say that the experience of healing was not about the cancer at all, but it was about what they learned, about how valuable their life is, what's important to them, and how much they want to live their lives with meaning and purpose. So living in this vibration of release may mean that you may also learn how to release negative influences, release people that are in your life, and instead turn to like-minded people. Their positive energy will rub off on you. I remember my grandma used to say, boy, remember the eagles and buzzards do not fly together. So true. So release is also about releasing our own ways of believing, especially if these beliefs are no longer serving you. You may have beliefs around tithing. You may have beliefs around seeing a practitioner, asking for prayer. Does that mean to you that you're weak and you can't handle the situation on your own? Or maybe it's an old belief, that mom and them said, no, don't go tell nobody your personal business now, Whatever it is, it's keeping you from your good. You have the power to change it through the renewing of your mind. In Isaiah 55:11, so shall my word be that go forth from my mouth. It shall not return unto me void, but it shall accomplish that which I please, and it shall prosper in the thing wherever I send it. So to speak your word means to allow the knower in you, the one who knows and who knows that it knows, to have its way. And when you hear this word coming forth from your heart of hearts, that knower in you responds in like kind. And there's an activation, like activating your software. When you get your software, you got to activate it before you can use it, right? So it's an activation process that happens in us. To speak the word means to let go and let God, knowing that God is already in the business of doing what God does. Summary, to speak the word is to recognize the presence of God, to practice the conscious oneness with God, to demonstrate the realization of the qualities of God, all, everywhere present, to give thanks, knowing it is already done, and to release it, to let go and let God. And in closing, some of you know that I'm a geek. I like technology. My alter ego, I'm a digital defender, and I love using metaphysical stories about technology that correspond to the metaphysical science that we practice. So there's an exciting new study going on right now, and you might have heard about it. It's called neurogenesis. Neurogenesis. Neuro from the Greek meaning new, genesis meaning birth. And what it relates to is this scientific process called plasticization, which is basically the renewal of brain cells. Now, when I came up, and I was taking biology and chemistry and microbiology and all that, they told me that you only get a limited number of brain cells, and if you go like a fool and go out and get drunk, you kill enough brain cells, and that's it. That's all she wrote because the pencil broke. You're not going to get those brain cells back. Well, lo and behold, back in the 70s, a young scientist discovered that neural pathways could be recreated, that neurons can regenerate. Back in the 70s, he was the laughing stock of science. They ostracized him, they turned from him, they refused to accept his findings. In the 80s, there was another discovery, but recently there have been discoveries that are incontrovertible. The brain has the power to recreate neurons, that we can recreate our brain through the renewing of our mind. And it's related to new activities. And what that says to us in the science of mind is that if you build a spiritual practice based on meditation and prayer, if you practice these 5 steps of treatment on a daily basis, you will not only be renewing your mind spiritually, but you will be renewing your mind physically. And so if you've got anything going on like depression or anxiety or any kind of physiological blockages going on, you can renew your mind through the conscious use of your will. Now, isn't that powerful? Now, who would be surprised? God is already doing what God does. So in closing, I share with you the 5 steps of treatment. Number 1, recognition. Recognize the presence of God. God is all that there is. God is everywhere present, even in the condition that you are treating for. Number 2, God is all there is. Unify with God. Proclaim your oneness with your presence. Instantly you will feel that connection and the response. God and I are one. Realize that this all-powerful presence which has created you out of himself is God declaring the truth of you through your voice. I speak my word. Finally, give thanks. I give thanks knowing that the divine intelligence within hears me always and responds in each moment. And last, but certainly not least, I release. Remember the words of Corinthians 6:19. That within your body is the temple of the Holy Spirit that dwells within you, which you have of God, and you are not your own. You have been bought with a price, and therefore glorify God in your body and your spirit, because they belong to God. And finally, remember that even though you may have strayed off of that highway, that you are never lost. And no matter what it looks like, no matter what the blind are telling you, you can always turn away from the blind and inquire of the divine which path you should take. For you have chosen to be transformed by the renewing of your mind. And I'm telling you right here that where you came from back there, that's yesterday. And it's dead and stinking in the grave. Let it go. And right where you're going ahead, you see that light. That is the light of the magnificence. The glory of God is within you. A new resurrection, a new Genesis, a new way of being, of thinking, moving in the world. Speak your word. Say, come forth, Lazarus. Come out of that tomb. I command you